What's happening, everyone? I'm James Lynch. In today's video, I'm going to do a bit of a stock report and look at 3 fighters whose stocks have gone through the roof this past year. And I'm also going to look at some fighters whose stock has significantly dropped as well. Fun little video here. Shout out to my buddy Marcus. And I know a lot of people after every event are like, whose stock went up, whose stock went down. Figure this is a good opportunity to do that in a year-long video. And yes, I'm keeping the suit on from the award show. We're going to do all the awards content in a suit, if that sounds good to you. But yeah, let's start with Sean Strickland. I think this is the most obvious one as far as stock going up. Strickland's the middleweight champion. Strickland got one of the biggest upsets this year. You pretty much see every news story now involving Sean Strickland to some degree, whether it's something he said or something he's reacting to. Sean Strickland has sort of become one of the biggest drivers of news in the MMA industry, whether you like that or not. The facts don't lie. There's a lot of interest in Sean Strickland. So to me, no one's stock has risen more than Sean Strickland in the UFC. I talked about this in the award show. He was my male fighter of the year. And even just go look at his podcast, like a podcast that doesn't have that many videos. He's done 20 videos. He's got 75,000 views on YouTube. And I know this isn't the be all end all when it comes to viewership or interest and all that, but the numbers don't lie here. Look, like 134,000 subscribers, views, not subscribers, 535,000 views, 81,000 views, 54,000 views. Like there has been a ton of interest in Sean Strickland this year. And if you look at him, you know, from last year, at the end of last year, where we were at this time, Sean Strickland had come off a close loss to Jared Cannonier. He got knocked out by Alex Pereira. People thought this was sort of a middle of the line middleweight fighter, and here he is now, the middleweight champion. So I think Sean Strickland has to be at the top of the list in terms of fighters whose stocks have risen immensely, and he is going to be my number one pick. Now, my second pick is Islam Makhachev, and I think you can't deny what he's done. 2 monumental wins. Would always like to see Islam fight a little bit more, but still, two wins in a calendar year is pretty good. And then if you add in the Oliveira fight, that's kind of 3 over the last little bit here. But it's the fact that he beat Volkanovski not once but twice. Not to mention the fact that Islam having to go to Australia to fight Alex Volkanovski, there was the shorter period for him to cut weight. He overcame that. He got a win in Volkanovski's backyard. Like, that's pretty impressive, right? And again, I think Islam was already pretty popular, especially with the Dagestani fans and, sort of the world MMA fan base. But that rose even more with him beating Volkanovski. And then he follows that up by becoming the first fighter to knock out Alex Volkanovski in the UFC, doing so at UFC 294. Islam's got to be up there as far as stock risen. Again, Islam had a lot of stock to go in here. I could see people arguing that, but I think he went from being the lightweight champion to now a name that we're starting to talk about in the pound for pound list. Like, these are 2 great wins. I know there'll be some moronic fans who say, oh, he beat a featherweight. Volkanovski's one of the best featherweights of all time, if not the best featherweight. So for him to go out there and beat him twice is extremely impressive. Islam's stock has gone up big time. He's going to be my number 2 pick for stock risen. And then my third fighter is going to be someone I kind of wanted to go 2 sort of notable fighters and then one that maybe sort of came out of nowhere. And that to me is Benoit Saint-Denis. I referenced him a bit in the award show. This guy looks like an absolute killer. Ranked in the weight class now, 13-1, 2 really big wins this year. Actually, sorry, my mistake. He's got 3 wins. Bombed him, finished him in the first round, destroyed Thiago Moises, who was a great win there, and then head kick knockout over Matt Favola in New York in his backyard, getting it done too. This is a guy that you want to be keeping an eye on in 2024. Like I said, 13-1 record, looks like the type of guy that could hang with anyone in the weight class, honestly. Like, he looks that good. To me, he is a guy that sort of came out of nowhere. I know there was, we obviously remember the Zaleski fight from a couple of years ago where he was extremely durable and was not getting finished in that fight, but I think he took it up another gear this year, and I just see a lot of people talking about him. So Benoit Saint-Denis is another guy that I think deserves to be in the stock report as far as, my third fighter whose stock has gone up tremendously over the last little year. Now, I'm going to mention a bunch of honorable mentions or names that I think people would put in this place, and there's a lot of them. So I, kind of thought about this a little bit, looked at the rankings and thought of some other names as well. So let's go through them. Dricus du Plessis, clearly his stock went up. Is that more than some of the other names I mentioned? We can debate that in the comments for sure. I think there's definitely a case for Dricus to be on this list as far as the top 3 guys. He was my breakout fighter of the year on my award show. Dricus is another name that, you just see the viewership. People are interested in this guy, whether you like him or you don't like him. He's viewing very well on YouTube. He's one of the biggest viewers on, like, in terms of viewership on YouTube right now. If you go look at all of his content, he seems well liked. There's obviously the feud with Izzy as well. The win over Whitaker kind of catapulted him, but he also finished Derek Brunson as well. Like, it was a good year for him. And, he finished last year strong with the win over Darren Till. And so he's, 3 fights, in the last little bit here, all impressive victories and none more impressive than Robert Whittaker. Duplessis for sure will get an honorable mention here. Some other names we have, we got to mention Leon Edwards getting 2 straight wins. Defeating Usman in the trilogy was important. Getting that win, not as, maybe not as, obviously wasn't as spectacular as his head kick knockout win, but still a good win there. And then got the win over Colby Covington. So he's 2-0 right now this year. That's got to be mentioned. I didn't put him in my top 3 because I think the Colby Covington fight, and granted it was a lot more on Colby's end, was not that, impressive. I think if he had gone in there and finished Colby, maybe we could have that conversation about his stock rising. But I think you could, I think there's some people still kind of lukewarm on Leon, and not to mention the fact it took so long for him and Colby to fight. I don't think you could put him in my top 3 as far as rising fighters. Some other ones, Alexa Grasso, she was my female fighter of the year on the awards show. She's another one that obviously the stock went up as well. You could even put her in the top 3 if you wanted to balance things out a little bit. She kind of came out of nowhere, so she's got to get it. Again, win and a draw over Valentina Shevchenko. The win, very impressive. One of the biggest upsets this year. And by the way, we'll have a video on the biggest upsets of 2023 coming out here pretty soon. We got to mention Sean O'Malley, obviously winning the bantamweight title, knocking out Aljamain Sterling. A lot of people counted him out in that fight. Didn't think that was going to happen. But the reason I didn't put him on this list is because he only fought 1 time, right? So a bit of a layoff coming into this one, but you could certainly make a case for O'Malley's stock rising. Although again, O'Malley's stock has always been pretty good. How about Erin Blanchfield? Big win for her. Following up from that win over Jessica Andrade last year. Or no, that fight was this year. Never mind. I was actually thinking Molly McCann. So gets the Molly McCann win. Comes out of nowhere and beats Andrade. Like, that was a fight where I wasn't sure if she was going to get it done. She does. And then beating Tyla Santos as well. She's got a big fight against Manon Fior coming up here in Atlantic City. But Erin Blanchfield, huge year for her. Her stock has risen as well. And I think the UFC's taking notice of that with them putting her on the Atlantic City card. Got a few more names on here we got to mention. Alexander Pantoja for sure. His stock has risen up. He's the flyweight champion. Just defeated Brandon Royval. Defeated Brandon Moreno before that. He's got a thing for beating Brandon's, obviously. But cool story too with him sort of, getting out of a bit of a bind in his career and now becoming the flyweight champion. He's got to be on there, a good list. We got to include John Jones. He only fought the 1 time, but again, making easy work of Cyril Gahn. That's got to be, noted as well as far as his stock. He now owns a belt in another weight class, which is pretty impressive. So those are some of the names I threw out there. If there's any names I'm missing that you would have on your stock report as far as picking 3 fighters, I'd love to hear them. But I wanted to cover a bunch of different fighters because there's totally a bunch of different ways you could look at this. And I just wanted to acknowledge all of them. But I think I've covered most of them. Tatiana Suarez is another one too. You can put for fighter of the year. So there's a lot. We can go through the whole roster as far as people who have had good 2023s, but my top 3, Sean Strickland, Islam Makhachev, Benoit Saint-Denis are the ones that are there. Okay. Now for the part that's probably going to irk some people, but we got to do it, right? We got to talk about the fighters whose stock has taken a hit this year. And I hate to say this, but I think this is a choice that a lot of people would pick. I think as far as a stock that has gone down more than anyone, it's got to be Colby Covington. There's no 2 ways about it. That performance against Leon Edwards took a big hit. The stuff he said in the press conference, I think, turned a lot of people off. He's done this before, Colby, by the way, saying stuff that people don't like. But I think I've even heard Colby fans now say, look, man, like, that's not cool. You can't say that stuff. I'm just telling you what people are saying, as far as the perception of Colby right now. And then he's been going on doing this media tour at the time of recording this past week, saying that he lost because people thought because he supports Trump, that he lost the decision here. There's no way you could score that fight for Colby. Like the Usman fight, I could kind of understand. I can understand even the first Usman fight, people saying it close before he got the finish. I don't know there's any way you could say that Colby won that fight on UFC 296. So I just think and then not to mention the inactivity, like him not fighting for a couple of years. Like, I just think Colby took a huge hit after UFC 296. Like, had he gone out there and had a close fight, or even if he'd gone out there and got knocked out, like early in the fight, at least you could say, well, he got caught. But this was just such a bizarre performance. I think Colby, I don't think anyone's taken a bigger hit than Colby Covington this year. So Colby to me is at the number 1 on my list. Again, I'm willing to hear your arguments for other people, but yeah, Colby Covington's got to be up there. My number 2 fighter who took a big hit this year, and this is just strictly in the cage, and that's Robert Whittaker. Huge opportunity against Dricus du Plessis. He gets finished in that fight, loses out on a fight with Adesanya in Australia. So he missed out on that, and now he's got to fight Paulo Costa in a fight that let's hope it happens. But Whittaker, right now, 33 years old, he's getting up there. Like, he's got to win these fights. And middleweight right now, there's a lot of new contenders emerging. I think Whittaker took a huge hit this year, and he did only fight, I think, the 1 time, right? If I'm not mistaken. Just fought the 1 time. Had some injuries, but Whittaker took a huge hit this year in terms of what we thought, right? We thought, he was going to get the trilogy with Adesanya. We thought that was going to happen. Now that's completely out the window, 100%. As well. So yeah, Whitaker took a huge hit. And then I'll go with another fighter that maybe people, I mean, maybe it's recency bias because we just saw the fight, but Casey O'Neill took a huge hit at UFC 296. She's going to be my number 3 spot. A lot of people were saying future champion, right? Like, you know, again, like when she was undefeated, she looked great. Now look, she comes back after an injury and she fights Jennifer Maia. And you think, okay, Jennifer Maia fought for a title, maybe too much of a step up, but the last fight against Lipsky didn't even look competitive, gets finished in the second round. Casey O'Neill took a huge hit to her brand. And, you know, again, when we're talking about flyweight prospects, I don't think you can talk about Casey O'Neill as being one of the promising prospects right now unless she makes some serious changes. But these are 2 tough losses here, fights that she was not in. Like the Maia fight was a dominant loss as well. Yeah, Casey O'Neill taking a huge hit this year as far as her stock goes. Now, there's a bunch of other names we could look at here as far as fighters taking stock. We'll kind of get into those right now. Aljamain Sterling losing his title to Sean O'Malley the way he did, that took a hit. Not to mention the fact that, you know, they're not giving him a rematch. He's got to go fight Calvin Kattar at 145. He definitely took a hit. I'm willing to hear cases for Aljamain Sterling taking a huge hit. Ian Gary definitely took a hit outside the cage. We can't put him on this list because in the cage he hasn't lost. He's won all of his fights, right? So you can't really put Gary on this list, but I know some people will bring him up. Wanted to acknowledge him as well because I think outside the cage, Ian Gary, the promoter, the entertainer, that took a huge hit this year. Certainly understand people making that argument. Another name I got to put on here is Conor McGregor. He didn't fight this year. I mean, to a certain degree, Conor took a bit of a hit. Now, Conor McGregor is still going to be the most popular fighter in the UFC regardless of what happens. But, you know, he got in some trouble outside the cage, didn't get to fight. Conor McGregor took a hit as well. Definitely welcoming arguments for that. And then the last one that we have on here as well, as far as a fighter taking a hit, I might as well just punch him in here. And I think you know where I'm going with this. Israel Adesanya. I'm willing to hear arguments as well from him losing to Strickland in a pretty, you know, shocking loss, to be honest. And then he also, you know, again, like he took some hits outside the cage as well with some of the stuff that was said at the press conference. And I just think, you know, you got the DUI, and granted, I know the DUI was, you know, I think if he was in the States, that wouldn't have even counted as a DUI, but he shouldn't be drinking and driving regardless. But yeah, so I think Adesanya as a whole took a hit and now he's taking time off. So his stock definitely went down a bit this year as well. The reason I didn't put him on my top 3 was because he did get a knockout win over Pereira, which I think people forget about, right? And it's also one of the reasons why I didn't have Pereira on my 3 biggest stock rises either, because he lost Adesanya as well. Now you can make the argument as well that Pereira's stock definitely went up by winning the light heavyweight title. I'll give him that, but he also lost this year. I have a hard time giving an award to someone who lost a fight this year, especially the way he did. He got knocked out in that fight against Israel Adesanya. So that's just the way I do my criteria. I know people argue with me on this, but that's sort of where I'm going here. So to do a quick recap and go over all this again, top 3 biggest rises in the UFC: Sean Strickland, Islam Makhachev, Benoit Saint Denis. Top 3 stocks who have lowered big time: Colby Covington, Robert Whitaker, and Casey O'Neill. Let me know what you think. Let's have a fun discussion in the chat. Again, there's a lot of different ways you can look at this, but that's sort of the list I came up with as far as who I'm picking for the biggest stock rises and stock falls in the UFC. And if there's any other cool video ideas guys want me to do, just let me know in the comments. I'm James Lynch. You can follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Threads, all that stuff, at Lynch on Sports. I keep it simple. Hope you guys have a great holiday season. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys soon.